We got really good news when it comes to the future of elections over here in North Carolina, where Republicans have taken a full majority when it comes to our state government. We have right here, North Carolina Supreme Court reverses its previous opinion and deems voter ID laws constitutional. Thank the Lord. Thank you so much, North Carolina Republicans. I'm glad to finally see some progress being made over here. And this is something that means a lot to me, and I'll tell you why. For the past 2 federal elections, I have had issues with voting. Right? I have had, and I have to be careful what I say, because guess what? YouTube gave me a strike about talking about this last time. So I have to be very careful about what I say, even though I'm just telling a story about what directly happened to me. YouTube gave me a strike for it. So let me try to say it in a bit more politically correct way, I guess. I don't know. When I voted for Trump in 2016, they handed me someone else's ballot. I went to go vote. I said my name, said where I lived. They handed me a ballot. I went into the little booth. I went to go start trying to go through it, and I realized, wait, this isn't my name. This isn't who I am. This isn't where I live. What the hell is with this? And I walked down and said, and I made a little bit of a scene. I went and kind of said, like, hey, y'all gave me the wrong ballot. Y'all gave me someone else's ballot. And they were a little upset me for calling them out on that for everyone to hear. But I feel it is important for everyone to kind of see what's going on. And so they were trying to get my information again. I was like, I just told you my information. You gave me someone else's ballot. I could have just, done something terrible here. This is awful. You need to fix this. Here's my ID. Just get my ballot. And they got furious when I tried handing them an ID. So they said, no, you can't have your ID out. You can't have your ID out. We can't be doing that. We can't be doing that. Even though, of course, it would make the most sense. So that was my experience in 2016 voting in North Carolina. In 2020 voting in North Carolina, I went to go vote only to find out I apparently had already voted. Someone else did a mail-in ballot with my name on it and voted. So I wasn't, I was able to vote, luckily, because I went in, on election day and had to fill out a couple extra forms to say, no, I did not actually vote by mail. Here's my actual vote here, scratch that one off the list. Now, I don't know how all that works. I hope it got scratched off the list. For YouTube's sake, I'm going to say that it did. However, that's still an issue, right? Someone was voting as me. And if I had not gone on to vote in person, I don't know who that person voted for, right? And again, for YouTube's sake, I'm not saying they voted for one way or another. I'm just simply saying someone voted as me, and I don't know who they voted for, and that's taking away my rights, right? I have the right to vote. They're taking away that right when they vote, as someone or as me for another candidate. That was my experience in 2020, where because of the mail-in voting system we had, someone else voted as me, and I had to go through an extra long process just to make sure I can make sure that my vote actually counted. And fortunately, again, for YouTube's sake, I'm going to assume it did count. Now, the funny thing is, though, is that should not have happened in 2020. Because in 2018, North Carolina's, during the election of 2018, North Carolina voters already voted for voter ID laws to be implemented in the state. However, the Democrat Supreme Court at that time ruled it to be unconstitutional. So, of course, they ruled it to be unconstitutional right before 2020 election, obviously. So we didn't have voter ID laws for a 2020 election. Now, with the Republicans now taking charge of the Supreme Court, they went and revisited the law and said, no, it is constitutional. If you can ask for an ID when you go for a beer, you can ask for an ID when you go to vote, okay? Excuse me. If you ask for an ID when you get a loan, when you if you buy cigarettes, if you buy almost so many things you do in your day-to-day life, you would need an ID to do it. So the idea that you can't vote, that voter ID oppresses anyone is absolutely ridiculous, right? I mean, the people claiming that voter ID is racist are operating under the assumption that black people are too dumb to get an ID to vote. They aren't that dumb. Like, black people are, as Biden would say, Biden said, poor people are just as smart and talented as white people. Listen, black people are no different than white people, okay? If I can find an ID, my neighbor can find an ID, right? I mean, I'm in like an all-black neighborhood right now, and if I walked around, every one of these people have an ID. Every one of them has a driver's license. All right, it's not a black or white thing whatsoever. And frankly, if you're too dumb to be able to get a damn driver's license, I don't want you voting in the first place. I'm just going to be real, all right? I do not believe in democracy. Never have believed in democracy. I think democracy is a absolutely atrocious, terrible method of government. I think it was Aristotle who said that democracy is the shortest lived and bloodiest form of government there is. I want to say it's Aristotle. Might have been Socrates, but I think Aristotle. Either way, I think that quote is very, very true. It's a terrible, terrible system of governance. We need to stop people from voting across the board, whether it does, not based on race, not based on sex, not based on any of that. We just need a better method for setting up who can and who can't vote. Because right now you have too many uninformed people voting for themselves instead of voting for the country, and we need to find a way around that. But again, for this case, North Carolina, we now officially, thanks to the Republicans actually winning local elections, especially in 2020, we now have in 2022, we now have voter ID in this state. So we go down here. The North Carolina Supreme Court ruling issued Friday in the case of Holmes versus Moore, or v. Moore. The second time the High Court has issued opinion on the suit. Voter ID laws have been a topic of fierce debate in North Carolina for years after the latest decision from North Carolina's highest court remands this case back to the lower trial court for dismissal. So it goes on a little bit here. I want to see where they had our governor, because we have a stupid-ass governor. We have a dumb liberal governor, Roy Cooper, just absolutely awful. Following the veto override, several voters challenged the law in court, arguing that the law was discriminatory. The future of voter ID in North Carolina has remained uncertain, but in December of 2022, the North Carolina Supreme Court affirmed rulings that from a 3-judge panel in Wake County Superior Court. Wake County is a terrible place, by the way, which held that the law violated North Carolina's Constitution. But after the general elections in November, Republicans obtained a majority in the high courts and agreed to revisit the case, which led to the opinion issued on Friday. We are confronted here with a simple question. Does SB 824 violate the meaningful protections set forth in Article 1, Section 19 of the North Carolina Constitution? Because if it does not, we reverse and remand to the trial court for dismissal of the action with prejudice, the court latest majority opinion reads. Now, Democrat leader Robert Reeves also issued a statement condemning the court's reversal. Today's decision by the Supreme Court of North Carolina further erodes the trust North Carolinians have in a fair election. So, again, the Democrats can question this system. The Democrats can question our elections. And nothing. No, is anyone going to condemn this person? Anyone going to condemn Robert Reeves, the Democrat leader of North Carolina, for asserting that now we have no way of knowing whether we have a fair election? Because I think this actually makes it a more fair election. I think now we can be much more assured that when someone goes and votes, you don't give them the wrong ballot by mistake. That when you go vote, you can't vote as someone who you aren't, right? I think this actually helps us have more trust in our election system, which, let's face it, we desperately need right now, because guess what? Both sides don't trust it right now, and that's a scary thing to think about. Hear that, YouTube? I'm actually on your side here in a certain way. We need to have trust in our elections, because if we don't, the entire system falls apart around us. So, voter ID laws help ensure that trust is stable, because we need it to be stable. Because if it's not, if both sides keep screaming that the election is stolen every time they lose, we're going to have a problem where no one's going to ever accept the results of any election, and then what escalates from there? There's only one way that goes. So we need to have it as secure as possible, which is why I also support us doing audits of not just a presidential election, but every election. Not because I think there is actually mass fraud that's going to change anything. Hear that, YouTube? Again, I'm not claiming there's mass fraud that's going to change anything, but at the very least, it allows us to be secure in the knowledge that our elections are safe and secure. We need audits on them to make sure of that. But the Democrats are going to keep pushing for it to be against voter ID, and I wonder why. Because here's the thing again, they're pushing, anyone who pushes against voter ID is one of two things. Either A, they want to do something they're not supposed to do, or B, they think minorities are too dumb to be able to get an ID. Either they're racist or they're evil. There is no in between here. If you are against voter IDs because If you're against voter IDs because you think it disenfranchises, the minority population, you're either racist or you're evil. Which, I mean, I guess if you're racist, you're kind of evil as well, but there's no way around it. There is no logical argument to be against voter ID laws in this country.